Hello everyone and welcome back to another pastel video. It's Ginger here and we are still in, well, kind of still in the spring mode, and therefore we're doing a very spring flower today, and that is going to be some daffodils. Now I've been doing more on my sketchbook, my floral sketchbook, and as you can see there's a few daffodil studies here, and I'm going to be doing a version of this one. I just really liked how that one came out. It just has a little bit of depth to it and some interest. I like the ones in the glass jar, but I want to do something a little bit different and just stick with this one. So I've got my trusty plate. I've just chucked a few colours on here for now, of kind of the colours that were present in the flowers that I had in the vase at the time, and it is a very cropped image. I've taken only the top half of the flowers sticking out the vase, so there's no vase. It's not really going to be a background. I'm just going to make sure there's some depth of colour to bring the flowers forward. So I've just created a selection of pastels. What I will do is any pastels that I haven't used at the end, I will take off the plate completely so that you guys can see what I did end up using. I'm using something a little different today. This is a piece of Daleroni Murano paper rather than the Canson May Tense, which is ingress paper. So that's the pad there. This is all the warm tones, as you can see by the colour chart there. So if I flick through, you can see the pretty bold colours in this pad, but that kind of just makes it a bit more fun when you're working. And this is a lovely kind of warm honey ochre colour, so it should give me a nice warm undertone. You can probably just about see the faint orange lines. I've just used an orange polychromos pencil that I had lying around to kind of map out what I wanted. I've kind of cropped it in again just to focus on the two main flowers. So I've got one here, the other one here, and then just the edge of the top one. So basically this one, and that little bit of that one, and then brought the leaves down a wee bit. So because this is Murano, it's not sanded. So this is a non-sanded paper again, just like the pieces I did with the vintage roses. So I am going to be working very lightly with not a lot of layers, because this will not take a lot of layers, and I'm going to be blending down my first layer as much as possible so that I can make sure I get enough layers on top to be able to work with. So the first thing I'm going to start with is just kind of getting in some of my background, and the reason for that is because I'm going to be working quite loosely over the top. I want to make sure that that background colour is down first, so I'm not having to try and go around my kind of more loose edged flowers, especially with the petals. It's quite difficult to get into the edges and shapes around a petal and between leaves, so you really want to be getting all of that in. If I'm sounding really out of breath, I apologise. I am, well, apart from being ill, I managed to catch a chest infection on top, so I am just finishing up the course of antibiotics on that, but I'm breathing better, but I am now just very crackly, I suppose, crunchy. I like to call it crunchy. Right, so I've got some browns and brown greys in here, which are neutrals, just to kind of help me build up this background. And like I said, I really want these flowers to come forward, so I want to really stick with some nice dark colours. So I've got this, which is a gorgeous blue-grey. You can see how dark that is. I'm going to mix that with some green so that I've got a really nice kind of mix of colours going on in the background, which we will blend out. The background isn't supposed to be anything particular. If you just imagine a kind of, you've brought the focus in on your camera to just the flowers and it blurs out the background. Well, the background then becomes just a kind of hazy mix of colour, which tend to all kind of blend together. And that's kind of what we're going to go for here, just so that we can really focus in on these flowers. So there's just a few gaps in between here. I just want to add, not much, but just a little bit of this grey into. And don't worry, like I said, I'm going to be adding some other colours into this grey background, but I want to get the grey down first. Just trying to decide where gaps are and where gaps aren't. Like up there. And then where I've got, could do with probably a darker green. I had a darker green on this plate and I have no idea where it's gone. So I'm going to stick with the more neutrals for the time being. I definitely want more of the gaps in here to be green. What else have I got? I've got this, which is a nice browny colour. Just adding little splashes of it here and there. Right, let's blend this in, see what we get. It will look messy, but don't worry. Like I said, it won't matter too much. I will be adding a bit more over the top once I've blended it down, just to give it a bit of texture, but not till a bit later on. So you can kind of see the green tones coming out there. It doesn't matter if it blends over where you've outlined your petals. Remember, this is just a first layer, so it doesn't matter. You just want to make sure that you're getting it in as close to these petals as possible, so you're not going to make it harder for yourself later, trying to go back around petals. I'm doing little circular motions with my fingers because that helps it get into this grain and the texture in this paper. It is still an ingress style texture. It's very similar to most ingresses. There is a slight difference in the way this paper is made. You can see more about it on Daffodils' site. But honestly, when it comes to comparisons between this and the Daffodils ingress, I think often than not, the ingress is slightly cheaper. The Murano is taking over. You'll see less of the Daffodils ingress now. If you want to see more about that, you can take a look at my pastel paper video. Right, that has got that down. Got my tissue paper now. I'm going to add a bit of water to my finger because when you're scrubbing a dark, heavy pigment colour like that, it kind of stains your finger. And because we're going to be working with some quite light colours, we don't want contamination. Right. You'll see there's not a lot of pastel dust generated with this because we're blending down so hard into the paper. Righty-ho, what do I want to go with first? Well, I want to get the lighter colours down for the flowers. And have I got my green tray here? I do. I am going to put out a darker green. It's annoying me and I want a darker green. There we go. There's a nice dark green. Right. So, what do I want to do? I don't really want to... I want to put a kind of mid-tone down for the flowers. So, quite like this. This is a kind of neutral grey. So it's a white grey, but it will give us a lot of room either side to work forward and lighting it, or backwards to darkening parts of it to give us our light and shadow on the petals. These kind of had it's funny really, got these from local shop, and you know when you look at daffodils you tend to find that their leaves are very much kind of wide at the base and then taper into a nice point. Except these were a bit more ruffly, I think is the word I'm going to use. And because of that, it kind of, I thought they were just more interesting, you know, having this fun edge to them. I'm just using the edges of the pastel here, so where you've got the sharp edge, and allowing that to dig in and come round just to give me edges. And I'm going to go up here and do the same. I'm not focusing on any particular shapes. My sketch is off to the side over here, so just to remind you of that again. That's it there. And I'm only really loosely following it. A lot of this is just memory and freedom, I think is how I'm going to explain that one. It'll give not only a more organic look, but also it just gives you a bit of freedom to stop thinking, I've just gone over that petal there, I knew I would, to stop really overthinking what you're doing. Just relax. It doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong, or it's the wrong shape, because every petal is a different shape, affected by how it's grown, whether it's been eaten by insects, whether it's bent, whether it's wet and bits of it have got stuck together. It will just be very different. Right. Well, actually, I want to put, that's the bottom edge of the trumpet there. I'm going to call it a trumpet, the middle bit. I think that's what you call it anyway, but that's what I'm now calling it. Right, let's get some of this green in. Oh yes, this is a really, quite a rough pastel, this one. This is an old unison that I have, and it's very gritty for a unison pastel. Now I'm going to do most of the leaves in this dark colour. I am going to be adding colours into it, so I will lighten some and darken some. But I want to get this nice dark colour down first, because the darker the pigment, the more likely it is to get everywhere that you don't want it. So if I focus on that now, then I can play with it later without really worrying about it too much. I'm pretty sure that was bigger than that, but okay. Right, we are going to blend some of this in. We'll start with the dark green first. It has a slightly bluer tone to everything else we've put down, but it will provide a nice contrast. Here. Remember, don't worry about too much. If it's bleeding into things, if you've got sausage fingers like me, it won't matter. The idea is that we get it down enough that we can work over the top of it. Right, just add a bit of water to that finger, clean all the green off. I don't want to be blending green into this neutral colour with the flowers. Remember, just like the vintage roses, this is just almost an underpainting, really. is a nice base to work from. Remember that the softer the pastel, the more pigment it puts down, the quicker you'll feel this grain. So where possible, I am using mostly Rembrandts because they're a medium to hard pastel. This one, this neutral grey, is a unison, and you can see I'm not really having to scrub to get it into the grain, but it does mean it will be filling the grain a lot more. So just bear that in mind when you're working with non-sanded paper. The harder your pastel, the less pigment it puts down. So if you're blending your layers more down into the paper like I'm doing here, in order to get more layers because it's a non-sanded paper, then the harder your pastel, the better. Right, let's do the yellow. Remember, these are not straight circles. You don't just plonk a circle of yellow in the middle. That is not going to work. Don't like that gap there. There we go. I've got a weird scratch line there. I don't know what that's from, but we'll largely ignore it for now. Right. So I'm going to pop on that side the pastels I've used. Or yeah, with that one, not that one. No. It's like I don't know what I do with them. I put like greys down, they just disappear. Right. So that's all we've really used so far, and we've kind of got our basis down now. We've got the shapes, we've got some of our foliage, and we'll be kind of blending some of that foliage back so that it doesn't stand out too much. But where we've got the taller leaves, we want them to kind of stand out because we want to keep the shapes to make it obvious they're leaves. So let's do leaves first. I will be adding some kind of squiggly lines just to edge some of the petals, and that's just going to give us a bit more shape so we don't lose everything. So again, I want to work on these leaves, and this which is a dark moss green. I just want to get some of this down. There, and it just gives a little bit more depth to that front one. What we're doing is I'm just picking random stalks and leaves to give slightly different colour to, and you'll see that starts to create some interesting shapes. Now I want the top of this to be lighter, and I've got more lighter green, so we will be doing some more of that. But I'm just going to add some of that in, and just the tip there and round, because I want the darker underside. Choosing and picking what I want to do. Right. Go back to this one, which is a bit more neutral and just slightly lighter. I'm just bringing this out. So where I've brought it into the green here, I'm then pulling it out with the pastel into the background. You'll see it just starts to blend that back leaf into the background, which is what we want. Because then we start to soften some of this edgeways. It kind of starts defying where there's no edges. It just blends into the background and disappears, rather than being very stark against the background. Again, actually I want lighter. So this is a really quite a light green, so you'll see almost immediately. I'm just gently tapping on it, and it just blends that in slightly, like that. Not much, but enough that you start to see that there's an edge there. Same with this one. I want this one a lot lighter. Like that. Just ensure that I'm getting that edge there. And the same here. I want this, just the edge of that one to catch. And just blend that ever so slightly with the tip of my finger. Just softens it slightly. Right, going back to my darker green. Because this one always looks darker when it's not blended out. Again, we're just pushing it out along the edges here. Large chunks come off there, which is annoying. Just re-emphasising that one there. Just want a little bit more dark at the bottom. And here, where we've got this nice edge that we want to keep dark. There's a lot of lines in the stems, so where possible, just keep a light touch and drag the pastel up and down, and it will just create all these fine lines like that. There. Right, so that's a bit better with our kind of background and our leaves. Now, just don't worry about the leaves too much, okay? This is what we want. We just don't want it will look messy until you start working on the actual petals, and when you start bringing those forward, you'll start to see a difference. So what I want to do is bring our center in first. These have quite a nice dark center, so I want to see how this brown works. Or no, that was going to be too light, so I'm gonna, I've got the blue grey, but I think actually it will need a mixture of both, so we'll try just doing this and then blending it slightly. It's kind of like a slight horseshoe shape. I'm just using the tip of my finger and dabbing down, and that just kind of blends it out slightly. Some grey in here, yeah. And then we'll add some of the brown. This just gives it a slightly warmer tone and also some difference. Okay, right. Now, shall we go with getting some interesting colours in? Yeah, let's bring in, let's make this more yellow now. So this is quite a vibrant yellow. It's also quite a soft one as well. So I'm just going around the outside where I want the edge. See, it didn't take much just to bring that out, did it? So if I hold my pastel like this between the two fingers, if I put more pressure on one edge and less pressure on the other, then I'll get what I'm getting here, which is a really deep, heavy pigment line tapering off. So if I put it down like that, it's hard to kind of show you from above, but if I put it down flat, but I put more pressure on one end to the other and then curve it, you'll get these beautiful curves like that. Remember, these are not, trumpets are not straight, they're not perfect circles. We're just looking to recreate a similar shape to what we've seen from observation, from what we've done, and just recreate it, but with a bit of fun. Right. So now I want to add some of the shadowing. So obviously the trumpet starts off, so trumpets flare out. So the inner is always darker, which is what we've got. We've got the brighter edges on the outside, which is what we've got. But we want to get the kind of graduation difference between the brighter outer edge of the trumpet and the inner darker edge. So what we do with that is we go back to our kind of shadow colours, are more kind of neutral tones to help us bring that shadow in. So I've got this, which is lighter than our brown, which is lighter than the middle, and it is quite a nice neutral kind of warm brown. So we're going to add this quite close to our centre where we want to kind of bring it out. I'm not pressing lots, I'm not adding loads because I don't want to. So, not much. Actually, I probably should add some to this one because it came up here. There. So yeah, doesn't look like much now, does it? Now we're going to add a lighter one. And that just at the edge of where we've put that and blending into the yellow. Now we've got another really vibrant yellow. This is a blue earth. So this pastel has a lot of very soft pigment. You'll see it's quite it's a stronger yellow than what we had a minute ago. And we want to put it, because it's a stronger yellow, so tonal wise, it's a darker tone because it's more saturated than the other one. So we want that closer to the middle again. Remember, we're working inside to out. Right, then what I might do is come back in with the darker brown and just reinforce the hole in the middle. I have no idea what that noise is. I don't know if you guys can hear it. And it's all good. Looks like a shop across the road set their fire alarm off. That's fine. So these trumpets had little veins kind of coming out. I don't really want to do too much, but just something like that. Just dragging the edge of this pastel out. Yeah, no, they kind of look a bit like pansies at the moment. I wouldn't worry. I'm not fussed. So I'm just going to use the edge here again, just make some kind of squiggly marks, because around the edge. Just gives it a bit of fun. There, right. Let us have some fun with these leaves now, leaves, petals even. So, obviously, where the trumpet sticks out from the middle of the flower and comes out, it tends to cause shadows underneath its edge onto the petals coming out around it at the base. So we want to think a bit more about the kind of colours that you would see. So what we have is our direct sunlight, which obviously in this case is pointing directly on the flowers, so I'm not too fussed about the direction as such, and therefore the shadows are going to be very limited where petals overlap and right at the base, but that's hidden by the trumpet, so you probably won't see it. But then you have reflective light, so light that's reflecting off other parts of the plants, which will give you other colours onto these white petals. And yes, these are white daffodils with yellow trumpets rather than yellow daffodils with yellow trumpets, but never mind. And you tend to find things like other colours, like you'll find flashes of yellow on the white petals and flashes of green where light is reflecting off the rest of the leaves and the stems of the plant. So with that in mind, I want to try and make sure we get a nice variety of colour and texture. So I've got this, which is a neutral green. Remember, this is indirect coloured light which is bouncing off things and affecting the colour of these petals, and therefore a lot of it will be more neutral rather than vibrant. So I'm going to just think about where these kind of more reflective colours would come, probably where you see a lot of shadows. So we're just kind of cutting in around the base of the trumpet there. You've got some petals overlapping here. This one actually comes down, probably mark it like that, and therefore I want some shadow and texture here. This stuff really doesn't have much, but I fancy adding some anyway. And then we've got a little bit here. I'm just kind of referencing from my sketch, and I'm just bringing this out. Remember, it doesn't matter. You want it to come out and cover things, and kind of blur the lines between where things start and where things don't. Kind of start and stop and hide and fade into the background, as well as suddenly you find a sharp edge and it brings it forward. Same with this one. A lot more shadow around it. Also a lot more shadow on the base here. So the lower petals. Doesn't matter, this is because this is unison, it's quite soft, so it's picking up some of the green, so I'm not too worried about that. It'll just add. And then up here, just softens some of this. And this one here as well. It's picking up some of the yellow, but that's fine. Like we said, we have some yellow reflection into things anyway. We've got this petal here, which is actually coming from this one up here. But we're going to push this flower back by keeping it more neutral and not as bright as these two. Okay, right, so that's a nice green. It's picked up some of the yellow. I'm going to add some more of the yellow back in, and possibly a little bit of pink as well, just because that's going to give us a little bit of colour difference, a little bit of contrast, and it also just keep it warm, which is what we want. So it doesn't really matter kind of where you're putting colours, it's more about kind of the tone. Like I said, I'm just keeping the petals really loose, allowing the pastel to do more of the work than me, allowing it to create shapes and edges. Remember, like I said earlier, these are not kind of your standard shape. They were quite frilly, so I want to make sure that I keep that interest, keep that shape. Right, now we're going to go in with our kind of light grey. Again, just adding interest, pushing some of this grey into the trumpet there. Remember, this grey is lighter than the other two colours we put down so far, so we're kind of working where is our lighter sections now. This isn't even the white, remember, so we're just allowing it to give us some edges, have some fun. Just taking that into the trumpet again. Beautiful, right. We'll do it with this one. So I'm just scraping it up and then dragging it around. It's just giving us that edge there, same there. Remember, I don't want too much light on this one up here because I want that one to kind of blend backwards a wee bit more. Now, we've got two more of our lights. This one, which unbelievably is a light cream yellow compared to this one, which is our pure and brilliant white. As you can see the difference there between the two of them. So we're going to use this one first. And now I want to think about where exactly I want the light to fall. And I really want to capture the edges. Like that. So this bottom leaf petal, why do I keep calling them leaves? This bottom petal is underneath everything. So I'm going to keep that more in shadow, the same as these two, because this one's on top. So I'm going to bring that in here, just so we can get that edge. Now, this had more white coming down towards the trumpet than that one did. I'm going to bring some of this trumpet back in. And then we're going back to accent these shadows. So we've got the kind of mid-tone brown in my hand here, which literally have just crumbled into a huge pile. There we go. Gosh, I hate some of these pastels of mine are a little dry. So just access going right. That's the shadows there. And shadow bottom corner there. And the same here. Remember I said these are darker because they're at the bottom, and this is darker because it's being shadowed by this one. You can see almost straight away that suddenly created this change. And then we're going to add this, which is our white, white. We're just bringing it in to where, so pulling it from the edge in. Just like that. Now I want to add some of these lines that I was talking about earlier, just little accents that just say, oh, that's a frilly edge, that's a frilly edge. It just gives a little bit more dimension. So this is our trumpet, remember? Now I want to come back in with some of these leaves and just accent or re-accent the ones I want to accent. Especially some of these back ones. Just want to get in some interesting lines just to give us a bit more shape. Actually, might be better off with this one. Just kind of neutral some of that. And I want to bring some of this back in as well. Just some lines. Maybe make it a little bit darker around this one. You can see I'm just about kind of running out of tooth now, which is fine. Right. It was just some light fun. So nothing complicated, nothing really structured, but just a way of getting some really beautiful kind of vibrant colours down, some interest. Just so you can see the kind of fun that you can have without really thinking too much about structure, about where you're going, just not worrying about it. So I was going to put some pink in this, and I still have the pink here. Is it worth it though? It's kind of adding a little bit something to it, isn't it? But not much really. So no, the answer is no, pink wasn't adding to that. I'll take these off for a minute. I'll put these on the plate. You guys sit there so I don't lose you. Right, so there is the pastels we've used for this. And we'll get the heat going, get the tape off, and see what it looks like. Oh, I lost a corner piece, never mind. Right, turn that off. And we'll grab a bit of this to stick the corner back down. Yeah. Right. Well, hopefully you guys have had some fun with that. Have a go yourself and let me know how you get on. Remember, I will be accepting submitted images of your work for a showcase at the end of May. So you have until, well, pretty much the end of May to send me any images of any of the work you're working on at the moment. You can either Facebook message me to my artist page, or you can fill in the submission contact form and attach your picture to that from my website. Otherwise, I hope you guys have enjoyed this one. Have some fun and have a go yourself, and let me know how you get on. Otherwise, hopefully I will be less breathy and easy to breathe by the time I do my next video. So ta-ta for now. Thank you all for your well wishes. It's been really heartfelt, and I've just loved being able to see all the comments from all of you guys. So thank you all so much, and ta-ta for now.